So our first speaker, a very well-known, prominent Southern Sudanese politician. Lam is a friend for many, many years. Last time we had dinner with Salva Kiir, didn't we?
Yes, absolutely.
And the president of Islam, myself, Bona, and the chief of security, you remember him. I don't know what happened to him now. We had a lovely evening, and we are very glad Lam is on his way either to Addis or to Kampala to engage, but he agreed very kindly to stop and give us his reflection on the future election in South Sudan. So Lam, I will give you the floor, because you are sort of mobile on your way. So please go ahead. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ahmed. I am very glad to see you again after a long break. And I am grateful to St. Antony's College and all the organizers for having given us this opportunity to share together with our fellow South Sudanese who are in Britain and other friends of South Sudan. I would have wished to be with you in person, but unfortunately, things beyond my control couldn't allow me to. So Ahmed and I arranged that I should be giving my presentation on Zoom. Unfortunately, it will be, a tight time because I have to catch a plane in about half an hour's time. Well, the title of my paper is Elections and Ending the Transition in South Sudan. As we are all aware, South Sudan has been under transition since 2005. And to many people, it doesn't look like they will get out of it. The first election was slated for 2015. The transitional constitution that was written in 2011 stipulated for that. But of course, when 2013 approached, the ruling party was supposed to have its convention and therefore to elect its leadership. The problem arose, and then which led to fighting in 2013. That thing was, the fighting went on until 2015, and then an agreement was signed, which was called ARCSS. It didn't take long, and within less than 1 year, the fighting broke out again, and so on. This one was more wider, both in the people who were participating in it and the extent of it. And this is the background to the peace talks that took place in Addis and Khartoum between 2017 and 2018. Now, this peace agreement also promised an election. In fact, it was predicated on two things. The first is to attain sustainable peace in the country, and the second is to usher the country into a democratic era. There was a number of tasks that were supposed to be implemented within the transitional period of 3 years and 8 months of pre-transition. I will not spend too much time on those, but you will realize that as time went by, these were the issues that were being used to extend election, because parties were insistent on having them implemented and so on. So as 2022 approached, it was realized that not much has been done, and therefore the parties extended the period. And that extension itself was not controversial because it appears that all of them were agreed to have the extension made. Now, not much was done within that period. And then when 2023 came, the parties were polarized on those who took the extension at face value at that time, because two things were involved in the extension. They said they are making extension because the timelines were not implemented or were not achieved. Now, they also put a date that they hope to do these things before December 2024. So when 1 year was gone, there was no sign that there was implementation of these things. And therefore, people started talking about extension again. So one party was pushing for election despite anything else, even if we did not implement these things, let us have the election. The other party said, no, if we don't implement the rest of the provisions, then there wouldn't be election. Of course, this debate went on up to September this year, last September. And as everybody knows, these parties have never been sitting down to discuss issues. All these discussions about election and no election were in the media. Now, what concentrated the minds of the parties is the fact that on the 5th of July, the National Election Commission announced a date for election, which was the 12th of September, 22nd of September, of December 2024. A result of that, or what goes with that election, it means that if election date has been fixed, then the Election Act says within 3 months before the voting, the government must be dissolved. All organs of the government must be dissolved and to be ready for election, which means by the 22nd of September, the government's national, regional, every aspect of it should have been dissolved so that people go for election. Now, it dawned on the parties that nobody was ready for the elections, and therefore they sat down and they discussed, and within 10 days, they were able to agree on an extension. Of course, this has its problem. This was a very unpopular decision with the people. They had a number of reasons that makes them skeptical. But the most important among them, they seem to believe that the parties to the peace agreement are bent on clinging to power indefinitely. Now people needed to have something different. They wanted to see what would be different this time when they are making the extension. So I will come to that later on. But then within that period also came what became known as the Tumaini Initiative. And the Tumaini Initiative was an attempt to include the parties that were outside the peace agreement. And initially, of course, there was no proper consultation when this initiative came up. So people didn't know exactly what were the aims of that initiative. But as the discussion started in May, the 3rd and 9th of May, certain things became clear. First of all, there was a document called Tumaini Consensus and Implementation Framework for a Permanent Constitution and Sustainable Peace for South Sudan. Now, this document is the one that raised a lot of dust in Juba, because in one of its provisions, it says that, let me try to get the exact quotation. Yeah, in one of its provisions, it says the following, that this framework, meaning the document that was being discussed in Nairobi, this framework supersedes all previous agreements with regards to implementation plans, structures, and processes in as far as they do not align with the roadmap set out in this framework. In other words, any other previous agreement will be superseded by what will be agreed in Nairobi, unless that agreement aligns itself with this. This, of course, created a lot of controversy in Juba, and led eventually for one party to withdraw its representatives in the team that was dialoguing. And in fact, the team remained only one for the SPLM IG and another person from SUA who didn't enjoy the support of his group. So later on, when they came with the 8 protocols that they wanted to be signed on the 30th of August, now they met a lot of concern, and the parties to the peace agreement felt that the agreement is being thrown to the dustbin, and therefore they wanted to revise what came out from Nairobi. And this is the background to the document that was developed later on, and it was supposed to be taken by the delegation to Nairobi in order to concentrate the minds on the talks. For the first time, the negotiating team is given clear terms of reference to refer to, and also the parties are saying that whatever agreement is worked out in Nairobi, it must align itself with the R-axis, that is the current agreement. Of course, others also within the transitional government are open to the fact that, you know, you don't expect all the parties to agree to what you have. So people are, if there are good points of view that could come from the negotiations, then there should be room to accommodate them, even if that leads to the amendment of the R-axis, because there are provisions for amending the R-axis. My personal point of view, that I would have, I think that Tumaini would have brought in a number of positive things to the current situation in South Sudan. First, we all acknowledge that the R-axis has fell short of delivering on the promises it made. As a result of that failure, we have made extension 4 times, 2 within the pre-transitional period and 2 within the transitional period. So this is the fact that there must be something wrong with the R-axis, why it could not deliver. So if we address that particular point, that would be something positive that the Tumaini would have come with. In the current situation also, not everything that came from Nairobi is not acceptable. There are certain good things. For example, the provision on external guarantors. I think one of the problems of the R-axis is that the guarantors who were supposed to be the IGAD leaders have quietly, withdrawn from the process. They have not been intervening when the agreement was being violated by any of the parties. So strengthening the external guaranteeing of the agreement is something positive. The renewed commitment by the international community to assist is also another positive thing that would have contributed positively to the peace process in South Sudan. My personal disappointment is that I had expected, our colleagues who are negotiating, and some of them were with us during the talks when we were negotiating the R-axis. We were expecting them to argue for a lean government, because that is what the people are saying now, that if you people are extending your period and you still continue with such a big government at a time when the economic crunch is biting on everybody, at a time when the civil servants are not being paid for almost 12 months now, for some, at the time when the economy is plummeting. Now, what is new if you continue with such a bloated government? So they argue for a lean government. Therefore, if those in Nairobi has come up with such an idea, it would have sold well with the public opinion in South Sudan. Unfortunately, they were coming up with demands that will reinforce the bloated government. Not only that, it will increase the size more than what we have. Even if they negotiated within the bloated government, it would have been at least tolerable. But to think that now you need to add more layers, that is another complication. They have asked for vice presidents, they will ask for ministers, they have asked for members of parliament, they have asked for governors, they have asked for all levels on the level. And of course, power sharing means participation. Nobody is against the participation of anything, but participation could also be realized within a lean government. It doesn't follow that, to be inclusive, you must have a big government. But of course, like any other process, people are committed to realizing peace. Now I hurry to make a conclusion to what I have said. One, it is an accepted fact that our axis has brought relative peace in the country. The parties to the agreement are not fighting each other. But it is also true that interfighting between communities is widespread. And some of the fingers are pointed to parties in the R-axis. As I just mentioned, our axis has been extended 4 times, mainly due to the political will deficit and inability to build trust among the parties. So this has led to the population losing confidence in their government. And the impression among the people, as I said, is that people want to continue in power without the will of the people. Now, the last extension tried to address some of these concerns. For example, there were measures to ensure that there will be financial austerity measures, the tightening of the number of increasing the number of the external guarantors, more measures of accountability, robust monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. There has never been a monitoring and evaluation mechanism before. People just wait until the last minute and say, oh, this has not been implemented. This has been implemented. So now people have put in place a mechanism to evaluate the performance of the implementing institutions and report on a monthly basis if there are any delays in implementation. Well, of course, it doesn't need also to be reiterated the international community were not happy with the extension, the same way the population were not. And we need to open dialogue with them and see how best people can go together. The situation is difficult. The economic situation is difficult. The war in Sudan has reduced the revenues from oil export, which was the main source of funds. And you know, election is an expensive exercise. So you want to go into election at a time when the coffers are almost, empty. And the challenge will be, where will we get those funds? Not only for elections, but also a moral question is raised. If you have your employees not getting money for 12 months, now, which is the priority? To give them their rights and dues, or you go ahead with election? So in the final analysis, the funds that are needed for the implementation of the task of the agreement is one thing, because it's not only funds for the elections. You need to fund the processes of unification of the forces, the process of constitution making, the process of reforms. All these, they require funding. So you need to fund those in addition to get funds for the election process itself. These are things that will determine whether the government of national unity in Juba will deliver on its promise to hold election in December 2026. I thank you very much for listening, and I hope I will have time to answer some burning questions. Thank you very much, Ahmed, and your colleagues.
Well, thank you. Really very detailed and precise analysis of the problem. I'm still wondering myself whether it is postponing the election a matter of logistic or a matter of a political expediency on behalf of the SPLM, thinking that perhaps they are going to lose power because of all the, dissatisfaction with the government since 2005. Thank you very much indeed for your presentation, Lam, on behalf of the participants, whether in person or on Zoom, as well as on part of the Sudanese program. So we wish you a very safe journey, whether to Entebbe or to Addis. And we hope to see you with us, Lam, sometime soon, I hope.
Inshallah, yes. Inshallah. And I thank you very much for your patience and for having also asked me to come. And again, I am sorry that I couldn't make it. I really wanted to meet all those people in person. Thanks a lot. And we wish you a very fruitful discussion in your conference.